I was not at all an expert in Web3. I knew a little bit about crypto, but I was not an NFT person by any stretch of the imagination. If you told me I was going to launch an NFT company, I would have told you that's not happening. I don't know what you're talking about. So, it's interesting how things can change and how quickly.
You're listening to NFTeaseMe with MIKEY, the show where I interview successful entrepreneurs, artist creators, and thought leaders pioneering the world of NFTs. My guest today is Alex Cavoulacos, serial entrepreneur and co-founder of Meta Angels. It's an NFT membership community creating real-life social impact and opportunities for people. Meta Angels itself has only been around less than a year, and it's both an NFT art collection and access token to a community of connected individuals who want to give back. And it's been doing some amazing things in this space recently. And Alex is a boss woman all by her own and is absolutely bossing the space. So I want to welcome you to the show, Alex.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat today.
We'll get right into it. Alex, tell me a little bit about yourself and your background and how you found your place within the NFT space.
Yeah, so I'm an entrepreneur. I started my career on sort of the corporate side, but within a couple of years started my first business and spent 10 years there. It's called The Muse. It's a career and job search site, still going. I spent 10 years building that up, product operations, growing the business, and then left last summer, not knowing what I was going to do next, but knowing that I was ready for my next adventure. I would never have guessed that within 6 months I would have launched an NFT company. But between the space being interesting, being attracted to new technology and innovation, and a passion for building community and bringing people together, when my co-founder, Ali, sort of approached me about an idea she had and would I want to get involved, one thing led to another. And we launched Meta Angels at the beginning of this year.
Amazing. So the entrepreneurship you used to do before, you mentioned The Muse. What was that company and what was that about?
The Muse was the first values-based job search site. So we launched in 2011, which feels like a lifetime ago. But at the time, anything you could do on the job search side was, it's text-based jobs that all looked the same. All the websites were black and white. Maybe they had pictures, but they were stock photography. And it was really hard to figure out, is this a place that would be a good fit for me, both in terms of my preferences, my personality, my working style, but also what I'm looking for in a job. So that's what we launched. We were the first people to take pictures inside of offices, the first to interview real people about what it's like to work there. And the company is still there. Please go check it out, themuse.com. We work with hundreds and hundreds of companies to show what it's like to work there and help you find a fit. You can look for all sorts of different dimensions. Does it have paid leave? Is it female founded? And things that aren't just what industry is it in or what location is it. So that was what we did. It's always, passion for me is to help impact people's lives. And I think your career is a huge part of your satisfaction for your greater life. It makes a big impact. It's not the only thing, but that was one of the areas I thought could really make an impact. So spent 10 years of my life doing that, learned so much. We went through combinator, the accelerator program there. We built great networks. And after 10 years, I was like, okay, I know everything I could possibly know about the Muse. I've given everything I could possibly give to the Muse. We had a great, leadership team, and my co-founder there is still running the business. So it was on to my next adventure. But at the time, I was not at all an expert in Web3. I knew a little bit about crypto, but I was not an NFT person by any stretch of the imagination. If you told me I was going to launch an NFT company, I would have told you that's not happening. I don't know what you're talking about. So, it's interesting how things can change and how quickly.
I mean, you've really fallen down the rabbit hole here. And obviously, you're the founder of Meta Angels. How would you describe what Meta Angels is and how the community works to someone new to the space?
Absolutely. So there's a couple elements that I'll sort of bring in to sort of break it down. The first is when I thought about NFTs before I got in the space, I thought it was just about buying digital art, which is certainly a piece of the space. But as someone I don't really collect art in real life. I have mostly photography of my family around the house. And what sort of changed that for me was realizing that things like an NFT collection, so Meta Angels is part of a bigger collection. There's 10,000 tokens in the same collection. Those can be a membership card into a community. And everyone who has one has this shared personal brand, this shared affinity, this shared mission, this shared appreciation for the same thing. That for me was all like an aha moment. And so that's one of the things when people are sort of thinking about it, is seeing the difference between buying a single piece that was made by an artist or something in a bigger collection is actually quite different. So what Meta Angels, to go back to that, Meta Angels is one of those communities. So when you buy a Meta Angel, of course, you get the art itself. Here's a couple of them as examples for anyone who can see behind me. That's a piece of it. And some people just buy it for the art. But what it is it's also your membership card. So if you think about in real life, you might have a membership to the gym, or you might have a professional association that you pay dues to, but that's monthly or annually. With an NFT, you buy it once. And so the great thing is, as long as you're using it, as long as you appreciate it, you don't have to pay again. You have this sort of forever access, or however long the community is setting it up. For us, it's, for as long as we're building, people with a token have access to it. But the flip side is, if you're not using it, you can actually resell it. Now, you have no promise in the NFT space of what the future value will be. Some people go into it thinking they're going to get rich quick. There are certainly people who made a lot of money, but unless, I'm not a stock trader. I don't think of myself as the personality type that's going to make a ton of money flipping NFTs either. I do it for the community, for the art, for the learning, for the experience, and for the professional and personal development. So, and when you buy the Meta Angel, you get access to our community. Now, what are we here to do? For us, it was a big experiment in terms of the thesis behind Meta Angels was, can we create a network of people that is valuable and that can help connect each other and help make things happen for each other personally and professionally, without it being a network that's an elite gated network, right? So I mentioned earlier, I went through Combinator. That's a premier accelerator program. I have access to a ton of other startup founders thanks to it. And someone else had to let me in. I have an alumni network from my, college that I went to. That's a good college. Someone else had to let me in, right? And so you get these things where you actually get stacked privilege and stacked access over time between the places you've worked, the places you may have gone to school. And a lot of people don't have those networks every day. So our goal, Ali is also, she's probably one of the most well-networked people I know, was to say, how can we help people who are givers, personality-wise, right? Who are like, oh yeah, let me help you with that. Of course, let me introduce you to someone who can help, right? Who are willing to help others. How can we help bring all those people together and let them opt in themselves? So that was sort of the mission, the goal, the experiment. Are there enough people out there who want this? The answer was clearly yes. We sold out just over 2 days in our pre-sale, which was unexpected. And since then, we've been bringing those people together. So anyone who has a holder can jump into our community. It's a chat. It's called Discord. If you use Slack, it's similar. It's the same idea. It sounds really complicated, but it's just a chat room. If you remember AOL, if you're an early millennial, it's the same idea, right? It's a chat room. But that has a lot of different areas. And some of those are just for holders, just for members. And so you use that membership card, you get access to those special channels. And in those channels, you can post your questions, post your what we call wishes, make a wish. They could say anything that you might need help with. And we help connect you with community members who can answer those wishes.
If you're interested in collecting NFTs, why not start with this podcast? This week's episode cover is brought to you by divine feminine NFT artist Amy Lely and available as an NFT collectible for Series 1 of this podcast. Each collector receives a future access token to NFTeaseMe, from live events to meet and greets and deeper access into the minds of my guests. Check out NFTeaseMe on OpenSea and Rarible. Now back to the show. Amazing. So stripping it back a little bit. So Meta Angels, for our listeners who might not be able to see what it looks like on screen, Meta Angels is a collection, essentially an art collection of angels, different types of angels.
Yes. There's 10,000 of them, and they're all completely unique. And any one of those is a membership card. So you have
also as a membership card, an access token into this highly connected community where people might not usually have access to certain types of people like yourself.
Yeah, and there's a lot of amazing people. We have Emmy award-winning screenwriter, we have entrepreneurs, we have product managers at tech companies, we have people who are investors, but we also have stay-at-home moms and artists and pharmacists and teenagers and retirees, people from all over who all bring whatever their expertise and network is to the community. So whatever it is that you are looking to get out of it, you're also putting into it. Our goal is to help connect people and solve the things that would make your lives better. And also create, there's something about being in Web3 this early that brings people together. People have made real friendships, have discovered artists, have supported each other. And so that's also really beautiful to see.
So if, for example, a teenager from a developing country, I don't know, wanted to go to an elite American university like Harvard, they could use this membership community in Discord, which is like a social media messaging platform, to put it out there, I don't know, put a comment out there, seeing if there's anyone else who went to Harvard who can maybe guide them into getting.
It's really funny because that has actually happened before.
Oh, really?
It was one in our first month. We had a teenager in India who said, my dream is to go to one of these, Harvard, Yale, Stanford, et cetera, school. And not only were there alumni who said, hey, I'm happy to tell you about the schools and what makes them unique and different. But people like me, I do interviews for my alma mater. I've actually done alumni interviews and be able to say, I can tell you the sort of folks I've met. And so that's a perfect example that it's really across the board, and it doesn't really matter. That person may then be able to help someone else who's traveling to India and wondering where they should visit, right? So it's just really this idea that everyone has something to contribute. And then what we share is shared values of wanting to help others and just generally give into the world. And that it's not about a transactional, I give you this, you give me that, but that altogether, we know that a rising tide lifts all boats, and that it's exciting to meet people from all over the world and do that.
So Meta Angels is 10,000 different angels. And I heard that it is called, the type of art it is generative art. Can you just explain a little bit just what generative art is?
Yes. Yeah. So there's, you may see generative art mentioned in a different context, which is art generated entirely by code, which is not what this is. But it is a generative collection. And so the way that it works is if you had an artist who had to make 10,000 unique pieces of art, that would take a really long time. Like 10,000 is a lot, but you want something that is where each one of them is unique. So one of the things that you find in a generative collection, so Meta Angels is a generative collection, but if you've heard of Bored Apes, that's a generative collection. If you've heard of Boss Beauties or World of Women or CryptoPunks, those are all generative collections. And the thing that is, the way that it works is that the artist will create layers. So any of those collections has a number of different layers. I'll use it for Meta Angels, for example. You have the background, you have the wings, you have the halo. Then for us, we have hair, skin tone, eyes, nose, mouth, clothing, all of those things. So for us, there's a dozen layers. And so any angel you see, you can actually go, if you're curious, you don't need to have bought an NFT. If you go to OpenSea.com, that's one of the sites. You can use any of the sites, but they'll let you actually see the layers. And you can select, I want to see one that has gold wings versus I want to see one that has the blue dragonfly wings versus the one that has the balloon wings or the rainbow wings or the fallen angel lava wings, right? There's all sorts. And we have 56 backgrounds and like 80 plus wings, but each angel only has one of each layer. And so the generative part of generative art is that you use code and you partner with a developer with a tool. We have Gabe, who's our engineer, is amazing. And together, what it does is it randomly generates the first angel, and then it randomly generates the second and makes sure that it's unique. And then it randomly generates the third, make sure it's also unique. It doesn't look like the first or the second. And it creates 10,000 angels out of that collection. And in some cases, certain layers are rarer than others or aren't combined in certain ways. So it's much less likely that you're going to get a lucky angel or a fallen angel, which are some of our categories, versus a guardian angel. But either way, what it does is it makes a coherent collection that's made out of, and for us, we have over 400 layers. It's still a ton of work for the artist to make sure that all of those work together. It's a ton. But out of those 400 layers, we could make, 1 million plus different angels, but we made 10,000. And those are the ones that exist and that are on the blockchain.
Sounds a bit like Pokemon cards with the different, this one's rare, this one's not so rare.
What's funny? The rarity is like Pokemon cards. I always describe the layers though, as it's sort of like for anyone who had those paper dolls as a kid, where you can you have, different dolls and different dresses and you can switch them and you can mix them and they can have different hair, right? Like it's that idea is you're layering on different components. And so at the end, you only have one file, but it was made up of a bunch of files that were squished together and that were designed separately. And so it's just a different process in terms of how you actually go about and do it. It's still art. Some people will do, there's generative collections where it's all code. and it still looks like, it's art on the other side. This is a way of mixing art that is created by a human with the code that generates 10,000 of them, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to make so many.
Yeah, no, that would be absolutely impossible. So what would someone have to do to own their own Meta Angel? Like, where do they have to go? What do they have to do? What do they have to sign up to?
So for to buy a Meta Angel or any NFT, you can buy it off of any of the marketplaces. So the thing that's interesting about the blockchain, right, and for people who are sort of curious about it, is, let's say I'm selling something in the Web 2 world, right? I have a dress I'm selling. I could sell it on eBay. I could sell it on Etsy. I could sell it, on the RealReal. You have to post it all those different places, and you have to bring pricing. And if I sell it one, you have to take it down, right? Blockchain is a single source of truth. So there is one place that says, I, Alex, own this NFT. And when you can list it in a bunch of different places. And when it gets bought in one place, it gets taken off everywhere else. So you can go to a lot of different places. There's Rarible, there's OpenSea, there's LooksRare. And so you look up a collection, but if you would go to OpenSea/collection/Meta Angels NFT. And when you get there, you would see all of the Meta Angels there, all 10,000, but it would also show you which ones are for sale. And so that is the secondary market. We don't actually have any more Meta Angels to sell. We sold out. We had 10,000 and they're all now owned by members. So if you're buying a membership card, you're actually buying it from a member that no longer needs it. Now, maybe they own 10 and they're keeping 9. Maybe they own 1 and they're not using it anymore, or they need the money for something else in their life. There's no judgment for buying and selling. But so you can go there and you can say, look, I want to buy the cheapest one, right? And it'll show you, or you can say, I want to find the one that looks like me. I want to look for one, right? You can put in a bid for one that's not for sale. But that's actually part of the fun, kind of the shopping before you buy, finding one that resonates. Ours also have unique descriptions. So sometimes people go for ones they love the look of, or they read the description, I want to find an angel of sarcasm, right? Because there's only like 20 of them, right? And see, it's one of those for sale. So there's a lot of different reasons, but once you buy it, it's in your wallet, you own it. And then to get access to our community, you join the Discord, and there's a way to verify your angel. And so it checks, is there an angel in your wallet? If so, great. Now you get access to all of these channels. And it's that easy. And if you sell it, it'll remove the access because it can pass that membership on to someone else. So that's one of the other things that's amazing about sort of Web3 is it allows it to seamlessly keep track of who our members are and for them to be global, right? If we had a membership community that was not on chain, we wouldn't necessarily be able to launch all over the world, take all currencies, right? We would have to stay US centric, and that already leaves a lot of people out who we'd love to be supporting and including in our community. And so ETH is a global currency. We can accept it. And so it's one of the ways we've also been able to launch, immediately with a global platform and a global community.
Yeah, no, Ethereum blockchain is, I think, the main blockchain people use right now for their art collection.
For NFTs, yes.
Yeah, for
absolutely.
NFTs. So if you can just talk me through some of the benefits of owning a Meta Angel. There's weekly angel grants, there's a lending program, there's the wishing well, and I think there's giveaways. And
there's a lot of different elements. Yeah, so there's, first and foremost, there's the community, which we call the wishing well, is where you can make a wish and connect with people. And we have a directory where you can, if you want, you can share what you're an expert in. So if someone asks for something that you might be able to help with, we can ping you so that, you're not having to pay attention to everyone else's wishes. You can just be, oh, someone is asking about gardening and you have gardening as a hobby, or someone wants to know about payment platforms and you happen to work at a payment company, and we can help connect people and do a little bit of that matchmaking. That's the wishing well. And that's sort of the heart of the community. We have our weekly angel grants. We actually are going to announce one shortly. Every Friday, we announce a no strings attached grant to one of our members. It's 0.25 ETH, which, depending on, the value of ETH, at the time varies in terms of the amount that it's worth in the different currencies. But the way that people can, it's a very simple form, and you say, what would you use the grant for? And so The one that's being announced today, which will be, it'll be already out by the time this podcast comes out, is someone who is moving from India to Scotland to do a master's in mental health, has been borrowing an iPad from a family member, but won't have one in Scotland. And they've been using it to do schoolwork and to make art. And so they're going to use it to buy an iPad. Last week, it was an architect who has a bunch of strays where in the place that they're working, their current project, and they wanted to help rehome the stray dogs and cats that were there. We've helped pay for flights to reunite grandparents who didn't meet a baby born during the pandemic. So that's another thing. We do a lot of partnerships with other projects. So we could give access, Atari, for example, is going to have a new collection come out, and we're able to put aside some spots thanks to a partnership with them for anyone who's interested in that. So those get shared regularly. And then we have
which company was that?
Atari, the gaming company, from when we were kids. We also just did one with the champagne company. There's all sorts of fun stuff that comes along in the space. And then we have you mentioned the lending program. So that is actually a way to let people in who may not be able to afford to buy Meta Angel or who want to get a sense of what it's like. We pioneered the first on-chain lending technology, which means I can take an angel that I own, let someone else borrow it, and they can't sell it or transfer it. I can pull it back anytime I want, but as long as I'm leaving it in their wallet, they get all the membership. To give a perfect example, we talked about teenagers doing civics DAOs. That teenager doesn't need or may not be able to afford to buy a Meta Angel, but they have a lot to contribute, and we have a lot that we can, do to help and support them in their journey. Why not have technology and use the technology for good and for inclusion and for accessibility? So that's the lending program. And then the last one, which I love, it's one of my favorite. We partnered with Adobe to do an artist in residence program. So we're now on our 4th month. It's a year-long program, and every month we pick, and we shortlist, but our community, actually a council from our community will vote, selects a underrepresented emerging artist. So we have a maximum amount that they can have sold in the space. So that's really someone who's breaking out or who's new to the space. And we commission a piece from them that all of our members get as a free mint at the end of the month. So you get to collect art for free every month, which is exciting. And then for the artists themselves, we help with promotion to help grow their follower base. We do a virtual gallery for them. We put them on our website. We do a Twitter space. And so we set them up with a mentor, plus Adobe gives them free tooling. So it's this whole month that's all about, let's push you forward. Let's put you at the forefront. So we had Kelly Llanos in July, in June, Sylvie Vo, who's fantastic, in July. In August was Kyla Zoe Raffert, who it's her first NFT, is one that we did for us. And then we just announced this week that an incredible Mexican artist called Laura Santiago is going to be our September artist. And so it's been really cool because we get to work with all these different artists, but our community gets to benefit as well. So it's like one of those great win-wins.
How do you choose your artists? Sorry, interrupted.
Yeah, so what we do is internally for the team, folks get to sort of shortlist people they're excited about and sort of different sort of tiering system. And we look at who floats to the top. And then for the folks who are in those top tiers, we have a council of people from our community who get to vote. And so the community gets a say in who's going to be selected. And then we announce that, the beginning of each month. So if anyone is listening who is an emerging artist in the space, who's breaking into NFTs, please, don't second guess yourself, apply. You never know. We would love to see work from any artists in the space who are breaking up.
I just absolutely love that you guys developed the first on-chain, so blockchain lending technology. I think you call it soul-bound tokens.
No, that's something else. That's something else.
Okay, well, that's for another day.
That is an important development in the space, but it is not what we're doing is not a soulbound token.
Okay,
soulbound token can't be transferred.
Oh, okay. Because the fact that someone can get to these connections, which someone wouldn't usually have just because they can't maybe afford to buy a Meta Angel. And some of these grants are life-changing, I'm sure, for people. So it's really nice, like you said, that you guys are essentially, guardians of the metaverse, being Meta Angels. I'm sure that's probably where the name came from.
There's definitely an element. It's not religious for anyone who wonders. There's definitely, a bit of a mix between having the idea of, guardian angels, people looking out for you, right? And then sort of almost like fairy godmother, sort of that side of it. And I also personally, I always think about better angels as well, right? That believing that people are inherently good, that they're willing to help others. And that, especially in a space where there's a lot of, me, how much am I going to make? Especially, especially in a bull market where it's like feels very FOMO driven and very sort of speculative and not necessarily community oriented, that we could take a different path, right? And that for us was really important.
So basically, if someone wanted, an owner of Meta Angels, if they wanted to loan out their NFT to somebody, that person who wanted to borrow it would need to have a digital wallet, and then it's transferred over to them. Is that how it works?
Exactly, right. So you don't need any, if you're the borrower, you don't pay any money, you don't need any money, but you do need a wallet, that, an Ethereum wallet that you can hold the NFT in. And that's easy to set up. The most common one used is MetaMask. And it's actually a really great intro to the space, because you're not buying anything yet, but you're getting a little bit of the interaction and figuring out how it works. And so in order to borrow, if you're the one who's letting someone borrow it from you, you log into our site. We have a member portal. You select the angel that if you have multiple that you want to loan, and all you need is the wallet address of the person you're sending it to. And it's an on-chain transfer, so that the person actually lending it to you pays a small amount of money to lend it to you and to bring it back. The borrower does not. So it's really an act of generosity. Now, unless you're in a very busy period, it's a couple of dollars. It's like buying someone a cup of coffee. That's how we like to frame it. But it is something that is done on chain, which means that there's a transaction fee, like anything on the Ethereum blockchain. But the borrower does not pay a cent. And when it shows up in their wallet, then they can go and authenticate in, right, and verify that they have an angel and get access to all of these things, to the partnerships, to the wishing well, to a lot of the different things that we do there. And then they can contribute. It's been really lovely to see. I mean, we had one artist recently who joined, it's almost like passing the torch, where one artist had joined, became part of the community, bought their own, returned the angel, then that angel got lent to another artist, right? And so there's also this idea of paying it forward that can happen. Some people will do it as almost like try before you buy. But in other cases, we did it because price of our collection isn't something that we can control, and the price of ETH isn't something that we can control. And we wanted there to always be a way for people who wanted to participate and contribute to do so without needing a ton of money. Because the whole idea of creating a network that did not rely on elite systems has to have a way to work around money. If you wanted to buy a Bored Ape, you would need $1 million. There are people who bought Bored Apes really early on who are teachers, and it has changed their life. Teachers today can no longer buy a Bored Ape, right? And so that was one of those things that we thought about was, how, who knows where the ecosystem will go as a whole, but let's push and use the technology for good and create an example. And we have other collections who are taking similar, that idea and building upon it, which is amazing. I love that. How do we really continue to push the envelope on how the space can be more inclusive and accessible?
Okay, so I mean, this all sounds incredible, the work you're doing. Can you share from your time working at Meta Angels and in Web3, which hasn't even been a year yet, what has been your wow moment?
It's such a good question. I think for me, what still gets me is the potential of blockchain technology and where it will likely go in our lifetime. I think it is so early. I think the use cases for it in the future, we may not even have thought of yet. Just like any other tech, the people in it right now are the super early adopters.
Wow.
The average person is not using, creating a wallet, having a seed phrase, doing self-custodial, it's a lot of stuff to figure out. And not that it's not doable. It's absolutely learnable for anyone who's curious about it, but it's that early. And so when you think about today, you have a MacBook and you push a button and makes a nice sound and turns on. Anyone can do it. I think when blockchain will really be omnipresent in our lives is when most people don't even know they're using it. Another example I use is the cloud, right? Take a picture on my phone, I can access it on my computer. I can answer a text from either one and they're interchangeable. I don't think about the tech behind it, it just happens to be powered by the cloud. One day we'll buy something on Instagram or somewhere else, and the data will be stored on the blockchain instead of in a server, but the consumer might not know the difference. So I think that for me is one of the things that are just like, thinking about those use cases, I find is so fascinating. The other thing I've really loved and appreciated is is that right now the Web3 space is and can be so welcoming. It's a place where you can build real connections, where people really are rooting for each other. And having been both on the corporate side and in startups where you can find your people, but you feel like you're competing in a different way. Like, it has just been so refreshing to see so much of that energy, people celebrating each other's wins, whether they're artists, whether they're different projects and founders or individuals. That I think has been just really amazing.
And what's been your favorite success story within the Meta Angels community?
Oh, there's a lot of them. I mean, I think our most famous one is that if anyone knows the Hug, which is an amazing community as well, Randy Zuckerberg, who's one of our advisors, but did the Hug, found her co-founder in the wishing well before our mint. Debbie Soon, who at the time had an anonymous handle, Safranova. Debbie posted, entrepreneur, here's what I can do. I want to enter Web3. Here's my skill set. And anyone want to chat? And a couple of days later, Randy wrote back and was like, hey, I'll send you a DM. And they've now co-founded this whole other project and building this curator and creator network. So that is a really phenomenal one that I love. Folks have gotten jobs through it as well. But for me, every win is a win, right? Obviously, like, this is a big, shiny one. But anytime someone can either feel connected or get information they wouldn't otherwise get, have something in their life move in the right direction, I think those little things are what builds up and what allows people to have thriving lives and careers. And especially coming out of the pandemic where people crave such connection to each other, it just makes me happy to see those happen.
Amazing. And finally, what is the end goal for Meta Angels? Great
question. I mean, I think the mission and the vision has stayed consistent and will stay consistent, which is this idea of connection, of reimagining networks and of helping each other. I think because the space is so new and so experimental, I mean, even what we're doing now is different than 3 months ago, is different than when we launched in February. If I told you I knew an exact plan of where we'll be in 5 years, I'd be lying. And anyone in the space who says even 6 months from now, they know what's going to happen is lying. But I think the end goal is to see, how do we experiment within the space and continue to adapt to both our member needs and the actual ecosystem to contribute in a positive way and to keep pushing things and maturing the space and pushing for inclusion and pushing for connection and community over the sort of speculative and transactional nature of other parts of Web3 that we have seen, over scams and lack of trust, right? So that for me is, I think, a big one, is continuing to find ways to live our mission and vision and to follow the space.
Wow, amazing. Alex, thank you. I mean, you are definitely on a mission in the Web3 space, and I love to see women like you rising in this space and doing such great things. Alex, it's now the part of the show where we do a quick fire round of questions. So basically, you're going to get asked a series of questions and you have to answer the first thing that comes into your head. Are you ready?
Let's do it. Yeah.
Okay.
And everybody, I don't know what the questions are going to be, so.
She definitely doesn't. Okay. What is your single favorite NFT that you own other than Meta Angels?
It's a tough one to pick, but it's actually a one of one. So it's not a collection sort of, membership type one, but it's a one of one from the artist we worked with for Meta Angels. She has a patron saint of mental health, and it is just a beautiful piece, and one that I cherish.
Wow, so it's a one-off. Amazing. You said you might not know this, but where do you see NFTs in the tech for good space developing in the next 5 years?
I think the way that it will evolve is to continue trying different use cases. I think it will need to be more accessible from a price point, from a technological perspective, and even potentially from a blockchain perspective. I'm bullish on Ethereum as a currency, as a blockchain, but it does have transaction fees that are, can feel prohibitive to certain people. And so I think there will be a lot of experimentation, Web 2.5, and figuring out how do you bridge both? How do you help consumers on both sides? I think that's where it will go. The question of how, I think, is still being, a lot of different players are experimenting with it. I'm curious to see where it goes.
Okay, slight change of topic. If you were shipwrecked on a desert island, which 2 real life items would you take with you?
Am I shipwrecked with or without my children?
It's just you.
One would be my Kindle, forever books. I mean, I try every year to read 50 books a year, mostly fiction, for fun.
Wow.
I do it. I know I read really quickly, so it makes it easier. It's not I know that sounds like a crazy thing, but I love to read. And for many years, I was working too hard to do so. So I would take my Kindle because that would give me that piece of it. And the other one probably have to be food related, like a grill or something.
A grill?
I don't know. I'm not a big griller. I'm just thinking on like a desert island. I mean, I guess if I have fire, I wouldn't need it, but something food related to like make sure I'm eating well, you know?
Okay, I thought you meant like a greasy kebab, like a grill.
Oh no, I mean like a physical grill. But I mean, if I have a fire, I wouldn't need that. I'm just trying to think. It'd be some variation of something food related.
I love how you're thinking much more long-term, Alex, than I clearly was with that.
Oh, I mean, if it's for like a week, I mean, I don't know, bathing suit.
Okay, great, amazing. Next question. Who's your hero?
It's a good question. I don't have a single hero. A lot of things in my life that have inspired me are an amalgamation of different people. My grandmother was a big influence on me, my parents, my friends who I really love and respect. There's different, thought leaders where there's parts of their lives that I find really interesting and inspiring, but I don't have a single hero. I don't know. I think everyone needs to carve out their own path.
Be their own hero.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You mentioned obviously at the start that you founded The Muse, which was a jobs values-based website and business. What is the best job you've ever had?
I mean, I think for me, being an entrepreneur, founding a company is the best fit. I mean, so far in my life, I've done it a few times and I love to create something out of nothing. I like to work with other people and bring them together for something bigger. And that job has allowed me to do that. I don't know, for me, the jobs that really I find fulfilling is working on a hard problem with smart, kind people. And as an entrepreneur, I get to pick a problem and pick the people. So it sort of is biased towards that.
Okay, so what's the worst job you've ever had?
I'm fortunate to never had a terrible, terrible
there must be something, Alex.
But I mean, I in a former life, I was a management consultant, and I'd say I've had a bad project, right? Like I had a really, really challenging project where I worked with someone who didn't want to be there as a manager, who was basically MIA, and I had no guidance. And it was very early in my career, and with a client that didn't want us to be there, like that were actually actively trying to get us fired, because the people who had to give us the information didn't want us there, even though their bosses wanted us there. So I mean, it was only 3 months long, but it was a really challenging situation very early in my career. I learned from it in the sense that I just had to do what I could with what I was given. I had to figure out how to disarm and build relationships with people who did not want to do them. I had to figure out how to deliver when I didn't have access to what I needed. And I had to figure out how to not only manage up, but work with/around a manager who was not engaging all at the same time in a foreign country with no support. And so that for me, I think was also one of those things where it was like a bit of a trial by fire of like, okay, let's do it. And one of the many times in my life, I've appreciated how I can handle stress and pressure more than the average person, because it was a really, really difficult project.
Amazing. Well aware you can handle stress and pressure. You sold out 10,000 NFTs in 2 days. That's insane.
I did not sleep that week. My team will tell you I was like a zombie. Hadn't seen my children, barely ate. It was not an easy week, but it was like, it's launching something as big. Yeah. But that for me is like, as hard as it in the moment, that's at least it's fun. I think that's why, because I like challenges, I think even things that are hard, I find some satisfaction in figuring out how to get through. That's why it's easy in retrospect to not look back and say something was a bad job.
You sound pretty fearless, Alex. What's your biggest fear?
I have a fear of heights, actually. It's not quite a fear of heights, it's actually a fear of falling. So I don't mind being in a plane. I don't mind being things like that, but being on a ledge, I'm not jumping out of a plane. I'm not skydiving, even really high roller coasters. I like to joke, there's no reason for me to pay people to scare me. Some people like to feel scared. I just have no interest in paying people to scare me.
People might pay to scare you, though. I now want to see you on a roller coaster, the top ones in Disney World or whatever. Oh no, I can barely do like a mid-sized one. Like any kid who likes roller coasters, like a 7-year-old is like ahead of me, because I've just avoided heights my whole life. Oh gosh, what is your biggest pet peeve?
Oh, I have a couple. They're all sort of related. For me, it's around reliability. So people not delivering on what they say they'll do. especially repeatedly in like a work environment, is a real pet peeve. But I think the more specific one that is actually a very common pet peeve for folks like me is when people don't use what's called a double opt-in intro. If you've ever introduced someone to someone else, right? So let's say someone goes, oh, I really want to meet MIKEY. Can you introduce me? What I should do, and what's the double opt-in intro is, I should check with you. Hey, my friend wants to meet you. Here's the context. Can I introduce you? And it gives you a chance to say yes or no, or I'm busy, or I have other things. When someone just makes the introduction without asking, it pushes the no to you.
Okay.
Whether or not you're busy. And it basically gives away your time, especially when you're growing in your career, or if you have a specific area of expertise. You'll have folks, sometimes it'll be multiple times a week, multiple times a day, just be like, hey, my friend is moving to New York. I copied them here so you can get coffee with them. And I'm like, I don't have time to get coffee with them. I don't have coffee to get time with my friends. Yeah. Or someone will be like, hey, can you help my cousin with their resume? I've copied them here. And it sucks to turn someone down. And so a big pet peeve for me is when people don't ask. I will give a lot to a lot of people. I put a lot of time aside for it, but I find it super disrespectful. So if you're asking someone to meet someone, check first, please, for their sake.
So what's it called? A double opted intro?
Double opt-in intro. Oh. So you want both sides to opt in, both the person asking for the intro and the person you're introducing them to.
Wow,
and then you make the introduction. Yeah.
Okay, double opt-in intro. Okay, don't do it. Anyone who wants to get involved with Meta Angels and Alex. And Alex, this has been great, but I want to know finally, what is your life motto? My life motto, and I can actually find it here for anyone on video. It's a quote from Walt Disney. It's been on my desk since I started my first company. It says, it's kind of fun to do the impossible. Oh, amazing.
And I bought that before I launched the Muse. It was on my desk. We were building it up. It was on my desk in every office that we had and brought home when we went to do remote work, and was on my desk when I launched Meta Angels. There is really an element of fun to doing hard things. And that doesn't mean they're not challenging. It doesn't mean you don't have low days. It doesn't mean that you don't have doubts. It doesn't mean that you don't feel frustrated. It doesn't mean you don't fail. But it reminds me that personally, striving for things that are hard is where I get the most satisfaction. Alex, this has been incredible speaking to you, hearing about what Meta Angels does. I'm sure you guys are going to keep doing amazing things in the space. And thank you so much for joining us on the show today. No, thanks for having me. That is it for this week. If you loved this episode and found it interesting, then tell your mates and give it a like or a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. You can also get involved with the community on socials, and don't forget to #NFTeaseMe.